January 2nd, 2020 meeting of the St. Charles County Board of Zoning Adjustment is hereby called to order. Just a minute, I gotta speak into this thing. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the meeting of the St. Charles County Board of Adjustments. I'm the board's chairman, Jerry Prinster. The duties of the board include hearing requests to vary the zoning requirements in order to provide relief where the conditions of a property prevent development consistent with the intent or purposes of the applicable zoning regulations, and to render decisions on appeals from an action of the Director of the Division of Planning and Zoning when it has been alleged that a permit has been incorrectly issued or denied. The board members are citizen volunteers who are appointed by the county executive, excuse me, with county council approval. County staff members are also present to assist with these proceedings and advise the board. At this time, we ask everybody mute their cell phones and other electronic devices. During this meeting, each case will begin with a presentation by the applicant, which is typically limited to 5 minutes. County staff will then have an opportunity to provide relevant information for the board to consider. Any written communications from the public will be entered into the record. The board will then take public testimony relevant to whether or not granting of the requested variance would be appropriate. All persons planning to speak at tonight's meeting must first complete a speaker's card and hand it to the recording secretary. Blank cards are located on the podium. Each speaker approaching the podium should submit their card, state their name, and be sworn in. Testimony should be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Once testimony is concluded, I will close the public hearing and no further input from the audience will be taken. A board member will move to approve the application so that discussion and a vote may take place. As required by county ordinance, at least 4 of the 5 board members must vote in the affirmative for a variance request to be approved. If the variance request is approved, the applicant may proceed after the proper permits have been issued. Any decision of the Board of Zoning Adjustment may be appealed to the county council within 14 working days after the notification of the Board of Zoning Adjustments excuse me again, or adjustments decision has been mailed. The Unified Development Ordinance and zoning maps of the St. Charles County are hereby entered into the record. Okay, I hereby open this public hearing on this case. Secretary, would you read the first variance request, please?
Variance request for 530 Canast Road. Application, is this the first one? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what I thought. Variance VAR 19-06. Owner, Missouri American Water Company. Applicant, Crawford Murphy and Tilly Incorporated. Variance requested, section 405.090.D.1 of the ordinances of St. Charles County to vary the maximum height requirement for the single-family residential district from 40 feet to 140 feet to allow for the construction of an elevated water storage tank. Property zoning, R1A, single-family residential district. Area, 2.95 acres. Location, approximately 400 feet north of the intersection of Berkshire Downs Drive, adjacent to the city of O'Fallon in Council District 3.
Is the property owner, applicant, or representative here to speak on this application?
Yes, sir.
Would you please fill out a speaker's card?
I did.
Okay, then please come up to the podium.
All right. Good evening.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, please identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Renee Lawrence. I am a senior project engineer with Missouri American Water. And so we are the owner of the water system that is requesting the variance to build the elevated tank on Canals Road, 530 Canals Road parcel. Crawford Murphy and Tilly is our design engineer. With me this evening, I have a coworker who is a project engineer for the pump station that will take place at the same site, Rachel Swearingen, and my GC, John Reedy, the project engineer, project manager for Goodwin Brothers Construction. So that is who is with me this evening. In order to keep this brief into your 5 minutes, I just want to bring up the rendering for the property that was submitted as part of the variance. This variance request is a follow-up to the meeting that we held with zoning and building and highway folks December 9th in the offices here in St. Charles County. And in this rendering here, you can see a depiction of the tank. This elevated the St. Charles District. We serve St. Charles District. We serve parts of St. Louis County. Chesterfield is where our water treatment plants are. All of our water is pumped from Chesterfield that supplies this area, the Cottleville, St. Charles District, and surrounding areas. We have a distribution system that supports neighboring water systems through interconnects, and this water tank will also be able to support those interconnects with other areas. This property at 530 Canals Road has an existing pump station on it that was built some time ago. The property was purchased by Missouri American Water in 1989 for the purpose of putting a storage tank on there to supply current demands at that time and future water demands based on system analyses. So the rendering here shows kind of a view of what the tank would look like from the different directions. Your staff report came back to us and told us your concerns about it being above the 40-foot height restriction that it's zoned for. The reason that we need an elevated tank in this area is because hydraulically, in order to give the pressure, the proper water pressure to customers that are in this canal, what we call the canal zone, and also in our main distribution zone that feeds the canal zone, that 140-foot elevation is the driving force that will help us do that. Placing a ground storage tank there will be a hardship on us from an electrical standpoint and from an infrastructure standpoint, because then we have to pump water more than once if we were to do a ground storage tank. Using elevated tank keeps us from having to rely upon power. It allows us to be flexible in how we supply the water, and it maintains that pressure that we need for current and future supply. One of the things that was submitted with our request for variance was the site plan, which gives a proposed location for the tank at the eastern half of the property at the highest elevation, with the ground elevation of about 610 feet. The pump station would be situated slightly southeast of the tank, and the interconnects back on Canals Road is where the piping connects to. The back part of the lot, we would not build upon it. There's no need to clear the tree growth that has grown up since we purchased the property. There is, to our knowledge, a sewer line a connection that we can make in order to do drainage from the site, from the pump station. Other things about this property and the need to have the elevated tank, like I said, it's really a matter of being the most efficient and effective with being able to deliver water to our customers and keep the rates down. Because every capital project that we do has an impact on our customers. And having to build infrastructure like a pump station and a ground storage that requires us to have higher operational and maintenance costs will then get passed on to the ratepayers, and that's something that Missouri American Water does not wish to do. The pump station, the tank draft that we have from our tank supplier, proposed tank supplier, kind of depicts what it is. It's called a composite tank, so it's partially concrete and partially steel. The concrete pedestal will extend from the ground up to the height that we need for the bowl. The bowl, steel bowl, is 42 feet in height, and that bowl will have the Missouri American Water logo on it. Facing eastward is what the plan is, as is shown in the rendering. The pump station is what we call a package pump station that will be adjacent to the tank, and the tank will supply water to that pump station as needed. So it has kind of a dual purpose. It will supply water to the pump station as needed. It also supplies water to the zone. So it kind of has a dual purpose there. The pump station layout there with the tank will be in such a manner that is in accordance with all of the building codes and guidelines in terms of setbacks and things like that. What we're asking for this evening is the variance that will allow us to build that elevated tank at the height we need to give that adequate pressure to the customers that are in the main zone for Missouri American Water and in the canal zone, what we call. And there is a dividing pipe, a divider, which is a closed valve between those two zones that sits there on Canals Road. So that is the basic overview of our request for the variance. And with that, I can take any questions that you would like me to answer.
Did you look at any other locations?
We purchased this property back in 1989 for the specific purpose of building a ground storage tank. So recently, we have not looked at any other property because we had already had the investment in 1989 to purchase this property and build a tank here.
Do you know when the adjoining subdivisions were built?
Some of the subdivisions were not there, like the Berkshire Downs had not been started when we had an initial survey back in 2005. The survey that we had just showed the parcels, but did not show easements, did not show any infrastructure built. So I am not aware of when each of the surrounding subdivisions were built. Like Berkshire Downs is served by Public Water District Number 2. We do have an interconnect with Public Water System Number 2. Therefore, this tank has the potential to supply that district should we need to open that interconnect, if they make a request to us to open that interconnect on Canals Road. And I can show you, this is the, from the St. Charles County Assessment Office, the 530 property is right here. This is our service area that's here. We kind of go northward. We kind of are in a backward C around the Public Water District kind of area there. We kind of go up towards Mexico Road to the north as part of our canal zone, and then we come around. As you can see, Berkshire Downs Drive there is part of Public Water District Number 2. The interconnect for that between us and Public Water System Number 2 sits right here at this intersection.
What's the life expectancy of this?
Of this tank?
Yeah.
Oh, I hope to retire and be in Florida someplace, but the life expectancy of any tank, we base our life cycle costing on a 20-year life cycle, but a tank like this, a composite tank, will be in service for 50 years at least. The way the tank is going to be designed, there we have the pump station that is prepackaged is going to be there, but the layout of the elevated tank will have the ability to expand the pump station capabilities, and we will be able to add pumps inside of the base of the tank. So should the zone expand, should we need to add more pressure, it's not like we're coming back to ask to build another building, because we will have the piping infrastructure already in the base of the tank, and we will just need to put the pumps in and fire them up.
Would staff like to provide anything further?
So, just want to remind the Board of Zoning Adjustments, they do have the 4 items that they need to address when they look at the variance. For the first item, staff didn't really see any exceptional situation or condition that applies to the property. And that we do note that the water tower's location is dictated by the service area and the elevation of that parcel. On the second one, that talks about the variance is not needed as a result of the affirmative action of the property owner. The applicant has provided enough information to consider on this question. You all may make that decision on your own, obviously. Let's see here. Question 3 is the variance would not merely grant a special benefit to the property owner. The applicant could construct a ground storage tank at this location below the 40-foot height limit, which would meet the current requirements of the zoning ordinance. However, according to the applicant, it would not function for what they need. And then the application of such non-use regulation would result in practical difficulties to the property owner. Again, there's additional information provided by the applicant there that would allow you to make the decision on that one.
Yeah, Robert?
Could I, while the applicant is here, I was wondering if they would be willing to address a couple of items, one being lighting, either uplighting, planned uplighting for the structure, or lighting in terms of safety lighting, blinking lights. 2, color or painting or advertising. And then 3rd, any anticipated interference with emergency communications. Now, I do have information on that aspect. We had the St. Charles County's Emergency Communications Department review this, and they came back and replied that they saw no interference to the county's emergency communications equipment. But those are some considerations that you might want to think about.
Didn't I read in here somewhere where the FAA said it wouldn't interfere with,
Correct.
wasn't tall enough to create any problems? Correct.
Yes, sir. The FAA determination at this point has said that there is no need for lighting or marking in terms of safety for aviation, in terms of flight pattern. There are 4 heliopads or airport pads that are within the range of this tank, the vicinity of the tank surrounding. And so I mapped those out, sent that to FAA with the appropriate information. What we will then also do, once we have the design of the tank complete in terms of the drawings from Caldwell Tank, who's going to be our tank supplier, we will then submit back to FAA what the height of the crane that they will use in order to hoist the bowl up. And then FAA will make that determination again as to whether any markings, any lighting or markings need to be on the crane during the construction period.
But in response to Robert's question, will there be no lighting on this once it's up and complete?
There will be the lighting, there will be no lighting at the top of the tank based on FAA requirements. As I'm looking here at the rendering, I'm going to zoom in some here to try and give a little bit better focus on the doorway. And imagine, so this tree line, we will remove a few of these trees just from a construction purpose, but a lot of the trees that are large there will remain. So the trees vary from 18-inch diameter trees to 26-inch diameter trees. We will only take down enough trees to construct the property and put in the pipeline. So as you look at this rendering here, there is a roll-up door and there's a people access door. There will be one light above the people access door, and there may be one light above the roll-up door, 1 or 2 lights, but those will be down floodlights that will point at the ground. The adjacent pump station, when you look at the site plan, as the adjacent pump station is facing there, in this orientation, from a employee safety perspective, I believe there's a pole light at the end of the road currently. When they drive up the gravel road, the only lighting will be off the side of the building. At this point, we don't anticipate there to be a lot of yard lighting, no high mast lighting that would shine above tree lines unnecessarily, just to make sure that an employee coming up to the pump station can see the door safely, can enter safely, and then use the interior lights.
He also requested or made a comment about the color.
Yes, so in the rendering here, you kind of see the concrete color on the base. We don't plan to paint the pedestal, the concrete pedestal. The tank, Caldwell uses what they call a typical tank white paint. That tank white kind of blends in. On a cloudy day, it won't stand out as much. But on a blue sky, North Carolina blue sky day, you will be able to see a contrast between the tank and the skyline. I have a picture here of a tank that I built last fall in Moscow Mills. And just so you kind of see, it's kind of hard with here, but this is in the process of the tank being built. So you kind of see it's a kind of cloudy, overcast day. The beige color there is the base coat for the tank, and the white color there is where they're starting to paint with the tank white. And you can see there's a little bit of blue sky, there's a little bit of cloudiness, but that's kind of the contrast that you'll get against the sky. And this is a standpipe that's 150 feet tall, to kind of give you a comparison of what they typically do as Caldwell tank.
You got anything to show me it in blue or silver?
Do I have anything to show you in blue or silver?
You got any other ones you've done in different colors?
Well, we typically, the most color that you'll see on a Missouri American water tank is our logo. So you'll see the blue and the red on there. We typically do white. Wildwood, I believe, there was a different tank color because that was a system that we acquired, and we met the requirements for that. If there are other colors that you would like us to consider, when I worked for Kansas City, Missouri Water, I built a tank, and we had a contrast of a kind of a whitish, kind of light blue, so that it kind of blended in with the skyline. We don't propose anything like the Worlds of Funds tank in Kansas City, which looks like a balloon, which I had the privilege of painting that too when I worked for Kansas City Water. So, but this is a rendering of what the typical color might look like. But if there are suggestions for a color that you would feel as St. Charles County would be more apropos, we're welcome to do that. Another thing that we are able to do, this is the eastward facing part of the tank. If it is the desire of the county that St. Charles County logo be on the backside, that can happen also.
Question for Mr. Meyer is there's no problem with them putting their logo on the?
No, no.
And what's the blue silver color you recommend, like a light baby blue or?
I don't necessarily have a color recommendation, but I was curious to just make sure we get on the record whether it would be one that's intended to be like a utilitarian color, or whether it's going to be themed like a, I've seen them before that where they're tomato or something, where they're really interesting. If that would be information you might want to know about if that were the case, but it looks like it's going to be a white or something that's basically going to blend in with the sky.
Yes, sir. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that, when it comes to us painting tanks, this style of tank roughly will cost us, when we go to repaint it, it will cost us $850-some thousand to repaint it. All right, and I'm going to give you a little bit of breakdown of that, because the tank will come out of service. We will repaint the interior of it. On an estimate of a 2 million gallon tank, that may be about $396,000 to paint the interior, about $351,000 to paint the exterior of the bowl, because we're not painting the pedestal, and then we will pay another $150,000 to put a containment screen so that there is no overspray to any neighboring houses.
Won't that happen regardless of what color you paint it? If you paint it white or blue or red or yellow?
Yes, sir. I'm just
you're
letting
gonna-
you know how
you're gonna
much
end
we
up-
will expend to maintain the tank. That's all. Cost difference for us when it comes to something like starting a tank is going to be minimal when you think about the overall cost of a tank. Out of $4 million, if someone picks an eggshell blue or silver, it's not going to have a huge impact on the cost of the project.
How often do you have to paint them?
Most of the tanks are on a 2 to 5 year cycle.
Wow. You need better paint?
We need better paint? Well, we do an inspection because of sanitary surveys. When they do the sanitary surveys, if there is a If there is a need to paint, they will paint. If not, then it is. Because we'll do the warranties for the paint coatings. And if the paint coating says this is a 10-year warranty, then we're going to try and do our inspections and make sure we watch it. And if the coatings fail in that 10-year time, then we look at that. But the inspection cycle is every 2 to 5 years, is a better way for me to phrase it.
Inspection cycle.
Inspection cycle, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
But there's no industry standard that says that you can't see blue or steel or white, or does it? I mean, there's nothing that says that it's going to make it disappear.
No, there's nothing that's going to make it disappear into the skyline. No, ma'am.
You couldn't paint it camo and,
It'd be nice. Maybe if we could get some of that mood ring stuff, that maybe based on the atmosphere, it might be able to change it a little bit.
has the county received any written communications about this, Mark?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone from the audience like to testify in support or against this? Please come forward. Give your card to the young lady there.
And may I approach and give you my business cards, or how does that work?
Before you leave, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please, your name and,
My name is Donna Arizzi Shields. I live at 3 Greenbrier Summit Court. So my property will actually, I did receive a letter. Did not receive the letter until December 23rd, conveniently, and we are here today on January the 2nd. Most of my neighbors did not receive notice of this, and is very disturbing, as we did receive it right at the holiday time. As you can hear, I'm sick. I have bronchitis. I feel very passionately. I've lived here for 18 years, come January the 8th. It's amazing how much thought was put into this, and how much time, how many hours I would like to know that Missouri American Water put into every little facet that they've talked about. And she's very well spoken, and I'm sure that she does a great job for Missouri American Water. But what consideration has been given to the 110 houses that now I'm going to have to drive by and say, hey, yeah, my neighborhood is Berkshire Downs, just find the 140-foot water tower and go right. That's not why I built my house there. And contrary to the 2005 that she was talking about, I had a contract there in 2001. I've lived there since January 8th of 2002. As Pam, my neighbor that will come up and hopefully speak later, had a contract in 1999. So when I look out the side, when I come out of the front of my house and I look left, I'm going to see this water tower every day. When I pull out of my garage, I'm going to see this honking big water tower that they've put so much consideration into, but yet haven't looked at any other sites that they could put it that is not residential, as our entire Canalst Road is. I've lived in Calumet Ranch, which was Missouri American Water. We are PWSD number 2. It is not going to support our water source. If it is supporting mainly Cottleville, which is from what I understand is the case, there's lots of land for sale. I understand they need elevation, and I understand all of that, and they need the pump, and they've put a lot of consideration into it. But where's the consideration for the 110 homeowners of just Berkshire Downs? How is it going to affect, have they done studies to see how it's going to affect my home value of $350,000 that I pay $4,300 a year taxes on? How is that going to affect my value? Have they done studies to show me where it's going to improve, that somebody says, yeah, I want hardwood floors, I want bay windows, and I want to live right next to a 140-foot water tower? Nobody asks for that. They ask for hardwood floors when they look for homes. I love my neighborhood. My daughter's 15 years old. That's the only neighborhood she knows. She goes to the high school. I don't want to leave, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to sell my house if they put this up. I wouldn't want to live next to it. And I don't think anybody sitting up here would want the same thing. So if they want to compensate us, or try to find another site, or maybe give us time for the rest of Berkshire Downs to have an opportunity to come and see. My parents would be here. They're my neighbors. They live in Moorbriar. My father's very sick. He's almost 73 years old. He wanted to be here tonight. There's other people that did not have an opportunity. We did not receive the letter until December 23rd, once again. Is it convenient that it happened to have, how many Thursdays are there in the year? There's 52. Why are we having it the day after New Year's? How convenient that it hit Christmas. I feel like this was done intentionally, and we were not given enough notice to have everyone come speak on behalf of how we feel so passionately. It's a very tight neighborhood. I love Berkshire Downs. It's a very sought-after neighborhood. It will not be after they put this water tower. I just feel like considerations were considered last. That's our neighborhood. Why were all the considerations about painting? And that's great that they're going to take care of it. But maybe try to find a different site or show me studies that it's not going to devalue my home. Because I have not found one study, sir. They tried this in Chesterfield, and I can't say it was Missouri American Water. And the people felt the same way. Don't put it in a residential area. The community college is right down the street. There's tons and tons of elevated, what I saw areas. They just built a bank. There's 3 for sale signs right there by the community college. Maybe put it out there, or put it where it's mainly going to be, which is Cottleville. I know it's gonna support some of Canals Road from what I understand, but I feel very passionately about this. I don't want to come out and see this every day that I pull out and say, oh, there's the water tower that does nothing for our neighborhood except an eyesore. I don't care if you put Missouri American Water to the street, and we certainly don't want to see it from Pam's backyard, Missouri American Water. There's no trees that are going to be tall enough that are going to support some camouflage. So whether you paint it white, light blue, whatever color it's going to be there for 50 plus years. I planned on maybe retiring in this home. I think some of us are not very happy about this, and we weren't given, once again, we should at least get extension so you can see that the rest of Berkshire is not happy about this either, but wasn't given the opportunity. People are out of town, people are sick. We were given less than 10 days. Think about it, December 23rd, today's the 2nd. Would you want to be afforded the same opportunity to at least go around door to door and talk to your neighbors and say, we understand you're ill, but maybe you want to sign this petition so the council can see that we don't want it there? That they at least should show us some studies. Show me some studies that it's not going to affect my value. Show me some studies that you've done everything possible. They may have owned the land since 1989, but this is the first I have heard about this. The first. I get my mail every day except for on Sundays. How can we just now receive that? That couldn't have been sent out sooner? To notify? That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to comment? Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please.
My name's Ed Murat. I live at 135 Berkshire Downs. They talk about wanting to drain the water down into Berkshire Downs and their system. Have they run a study to see how much water that'll take? I know stormwater-wise, when I wanted to run a separate pipe in my own area, they said no. The piping is maxed out in that area. And that's coming from the city of O'Fallon. I don't know if they want to run it in the sanitary sewer. I don't know if you declare that a contaminated water when they run that. Will that sanitary sewer take it? How much water are they going to dump? They're going to build this tank. Is the infrastructure present for all this increased capacity? Is the lines in Canals Road? Are they going to start going cross country? Have they presented this to you? I would agree with the lady that there's other places they could have built this thing. I know we're on a water table up there. That's why they put the pumping station. Why was that pumping station ever called residential? You know, it's a misnomer. That subdivision has been there quite a while before I moved there. It was started by another developer, and he sold a few lots, and then he sold it off to another developer. No, and another thing, when I've come to talk about the value of my house and the value of my subdivision, I go into the assessor's office. I said, I looked at Avondale. So what's the price of Avondale? Oh, no, we don't consider your subdivision in that level. You are an upgraded subdivision, along with Legacy Point, Autumn Terrace, and the Better Homes. So I feel that that tank does not deserve to be 140 foot tall. I want to know, have you looked at their calculations? Why they need the water pressure? Has the City of St. Charles Engineering looked at the water pressures and the need for that 140 foot tank? Or is that just a what if? There's too many times, let's build it here, we've got a chance. Do we really need this? Should there not be another substation built somewhere else that you can pump this water to another tank that would serve that area? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes.
In your name, please.
Mark Siddle, and we're at number 5 Greenbrier Summit Court, which our property is directly behind where this tower is going to go. And obviously the eyesore is number 1, and 2, the gentleman made mention of going into our sewer lines, which I don't know if they have to put piping in, or do you know how that works into our sewers?
Well, they can't drain that into a sanitary, can they? Sanitary.
I
Robert?
thought that's what was explained.
Well,
Water was not suitable to be drained right into a storm drain.
Right, because the sewer runs directly into through our backyard. So they would have to come down the hill and tap into that sewer system there.
can you address that? When they are going to drain this tank down, I guess they're referring to?
So usually what happens when we drain a tank,
Yeah. I'm not going to swear you in again, though.
I appreciate that. When we take a tank out of service, sir, we use as much of the water as we possibly can before we send water down the drain. Now, what we can do, there's 2 options. We can drain to a storm drain, but we dechlorinate the water, so it does not kill any animal life or plant life. If we go to a sanitary sewer, then we have to make sure that the sewer has the capacity. That is part of the design project. The design project will determine if there is a sewer available to receive the flow that we might have come through there, if we need to drain the tank. There will be a standard sewer connection, lateral connection from the pump station, and that is there for us doing samples. If someone has to mop the floor, that's a floor drain, and that will go to the sanitary sewer. So that will most likely have your typical lateral connection to the sanitary sewer. It is Duckett Creek that serves that parcel. We'll have to pay the connection fees, we'll have to pay the assessment fees and infrastructure fees. And when we submit that application to them, then they will determine and check our calculations of our design engineer, our registered PE, and determine and make sure that the sewer has the capacity to do what it needs to do.
Do you do that before you build the structure, or do you wait until you need to drain it down and then?
That is all done before the structure is ever built. That's part of the permitting process. Because when we submit these plans to the state of Missouri, Department of Natural Resources, they look at all of that. They look at sewer capacity, they look at stormwater capacity, if it's us draining, what happens if there's an accidental overflow, making sure there's ways for water not to do property damage and for the water to be disposed of accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Which does bring me to another situation. If there was some type of failure, this would be going downhill directly into our property. So that was another thing with safety concerns. I mean, if that was ever to happen, or Lord forbid, earthquake or anything like that. And then again, which has been mentioned already, was the fact that we only received these letters. I mean, is there a reason why we just now received these?
What are they supposed to get them? Is there a?
By ordinance, we're to send them out at least 5 days in advance of the meeting and no more than 15 days in advance of the meeting. And so we sent them out, and our meeting is on a regular basis. It's the first Thursday of each month. And it just so happened to fall in this cycle where the meeting would be in January. So that's what dictated that when the letters went out.
Mr. Meyer, what's the radius that people were contacted in from this parcel?
For variances, the ordinance actually says adjoining property owners. So we just sent to owners of adjoining properties. And it's different than if it were a rezoning or a conditional use permit or some other type of public hearing. For variances specifically, it's notify owners of adjoining properties. And it has to, I think it has to go back to what they call a potentially an aggrieved party. I mean, that's my understanding, but that's what the ordinance says.
Well, I would think in this case, with the visibility of this tank, it should be sent to anyone within sight of this tank, so.
That's all addressed by ordinance, though it's not,
Right.
Unfortunately, you don't get individually, "Wait, this thing's gonna be ugly, so we gotta let more people know."
Right. Well, I think with the height of it, though, is the point, If it was a ground tank, I don't think it would be any issue, and I would think that would be something, I mean, again, these points have been brought up, but that subdivision has been there longer. We're in 99, so I don't know where she got her information on the subdivision, but I mean, I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I mean, I don't know, the cost of them as far as a ground tank versus this isn't really our issue, it's their issue. So, I mean, if it was a ground tank, because there was some mention of it, and we knew that property was there, and we knew there was a pumping station there, but we were told, not that it matters, I guess, but we were told that that's all that it would ever be. And if they ever did do a water tower, it would be a ground tank. So, I mean, take it for what it's worth, I guess, but, and obviously, again, the unsightliness of it. I think that's all
All
I
right,
have.
thank you. Yeah. Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dennis Mayer, and we live at 109 Berkshire Downs Drive, which is just 2 houses in off Nost Road. I've heard you talk and kind of explain that this was a site that you guys looked at, but you really didn't look at any other areas. That would be, is the elevation, I guess, the prime factor? And if it is, why do you have to go another 140 feet instead of just having a regular storage tank?
Mr. Chairman, as a point of order, could you please just address the board?
Oh, I can't
Okay.
talk to her.
And you can ask any questions you'd like, and then we can call the applicant back up to address them.
Okay. So I guess that's my question, is they looked at this site because, I guess it's easy, because they already have that area purchased and they have the pumping station there. But she had stated that they never looked at any other sites. Like the lady mentioned, there's, you know, the college right there and there's other areas. And, you know, the storage tank, is that really adequate probably for what needs to be done? But then now they're going to this 140-foot tall tower as something in the future that, you know, possibly they may need that extra water pressure or whatever it is. I guess that's kind of my question. Why did they go from the storage tank idea, which was a possibility, to this tower?
Would you like to address that?
Sure, yes, sir.
You got to come back up.
Yeah, I can do that. Not a problem. So when we have our planning section, every year they do an assessment of projects. Based on this project, which had been on the books for a very long time, like I shared, we purchased the property in 1989. We had a survey in 2005 where the project at one point was going to move forward with building storage there. Housing boom dive happened, so there was no need to build additional storage. As this project then was put back on the books to build the storage, our planning group looked again hydraulically, the pressure needs that are in the area, on the east side of Canals Road, to the north and to the south, and for both the Canals Zone and for the main pressure zone, which goes all the way back through Cottleville and all the way back to our plant on Hog Hollow Road. Pressures are very low at times of the morning when people all turn on their sprinklers, when there's high demand, and so that's one reason you need the extra pressure. This tank also supplies, because it is a 2 million gallon tank, it will also supply additional fire flow, volume for fires to defeat fires and at adequate pressures. So having that extra fire flow, firefighting capacity is another reason for the tank. That extra capacity can also help people's insurance rates go down because they're better protected from a distribution system standpoint. Distribution systems are built for fire protection first, drinking water second,
Toilet flushing third.
and flushing third.
To answer Dennis's question, though, can that not be done with a tank that's not 140 feet in the air? He said that there was conversations earlier meaning not at this proceeding, that it was going to be like a ground tank as opposed to a 140-foot elevated tank.
And at the time that they looked at ground tank, that was 2005, at that time, the build-out in the area was such that that could support that, and the leadership of American Water at that time looked at that as a viable option. It is no longer a viable option from a hydraulic standpoint, from a pressure needs standpoint, from an operational and maintenance standpoint, and from an infrastructure standpoint. Choosing a new location is not a matter of just picking a point on a map. You have to have the pipeline capacity in order to support delivering the water to the customers. Picking another location would cause additional infrastructure to have to be built, pipeline infrastructure. You'd have to make sure that all of that got permitted, all of that got zoned, and then that would further push the project out. This project is scheduled to be in service by 2021. The pump station will be in service by May of 2020. So that is why building at this location where the piping infrastructure is available to deliver the water for current needs and potentially for expanding needs of the zone is why this site still is very viable. That base elevation of 610 feet is important. That overflow elevation of, after the 100-foot riser, overflow elevation of 740 feet is very important.
Thank you.
I guess my other question would be, is there a possibility of them building another pumping station somewhere else that would address the water pressure problem as opposed to having to do this tower to get the water pressure that they seem to need? And looking at the map, it was showing that this water tower is basically right on the edge of the whole area that they serve. It seems Yeah, it's true. I understand what you're saying, that there's, you gotta have the infrastructure, the piping system. And one thing that kind of alerted me when this gentleman back here was saying that he talked about someone is looking about increasing the water pressure in that area, and they said, no, they're already now at capacity. So if this thing's gonna put more water pressure on that piping system, has that been addressed? Is that something that they've looked at? That's been a problem? And then the other guy that mentioned about the, when they need to drain the tank to paint the inside, or what they're gonna do with it, they have to drain that water into the sewer system. Is that gonna be a problem where people are gonna start now having water coming up through their drain in the basement because the system can't handle that kind of flow rate at that time? Or if they can do it slow enough, maybe it's not a problem?
That's all part of the engineering that they do before they
Right,
construct
but-
this.
But have they, it's not like they haven't done that yet. And
Oh, I'm certain they have, but I can't speak to that.
This project in this current state started again in November of this year. So part of the process as we design this is sitting down, making sure we have pipeline sized properly. So, and I need to address you, I apologize, but I wanted
hear
to
you.
make sure that he understood that I was addressing his
Right.
concerns. So all of that design goes on. At this point, we're in that design phase. We plan to submit to the state of Missouri by the end of January with some preliminary designs. They'll give us our feedback. So December 9th, we met, like I started out, we met with the zoning boards. The deadline for submitting our request for variance was that Friday following that December 9th meeting, and that's when we submitted to our request for the variance. And so this is all part of that follow-up, and the timeline is such that it is. But the project started back in November, so it's not like we have tried to hide anything. I just want to make sure that that's on the record. We're doing this in a timely fashion based on us starting the project and submitting and finding out information that we needed to submit and request a variance, and that's what we're going through, so.
Thank you.
so, I'm sorry, I guess. So if this comes out where they've looked at this and the size of the piping is not adequate for the flow rate, and then also if they need different pipes for the higher pressure, I guess, are they going to be digging up, adding more pipes all the way down through NOS and somewhere else, or tearing up the whole street and everything else? Is that going to be an impact? I was kind of questioning a lot of things, like they're just starting this, so who knows what's going to come out of this, but.
Well, I think they try to do all the research before they break ground. It sounds to me like they're moving along pretty quickly. They're going to have something functioning by May of 2020, which,
So I guess my last question, so I'll stop here, is there going to be another hearing once they've come and have provided their final report of here's what we're doing, and this is all the things we found, and we can go forward with this? Or that we found problems, and here's what we're going to have to do to like you saw, the drainage or the size of the piping or whatever that, how's that going to work?
Robert, you want to address that?
Sure. They will need to get permits to the extent that the law requires it, because they're a public utility. But one thing certainly they would need to do is if they tap into, or if they connect to a sanitary sewer line, for instance, or a storm sewer line, the owner of that sewer line is going to require them to show that it's going to work and it's not going to harm the system. So as part of the tap-on connection process, the owner of that system is going to require them to show that. And it's kind of the same as if an industry, like an industrial plant, let's just say, for instance, if they connect to a sewer line, they require the industrial plant to show that it's going to work, and others as well. You know, if it were residential subdivision, they would need to show, the developer residential subdivision would need to show that it's going to work with that sewer line, et cetera.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Your name, please?
Jennifer Wagner. I live at 210 Greenbrier Bluffs Drive. My property does not back up immediately to the property that we're discussing, the water tower going on. I did not receive a letter, which I know they were saying that you don't necessarily have to for this type of thing. However, I would like to ask for an extension for the rest of the property owners in our subdivision. Quite a few people were not able to make it. Quite a few did not even know about it, obviously. Not a whole lot of happy customers in our subdivision. The ones that I did talk to have a few days to talk to Ian about this. So I would like to ask for an extension to at least the next month's meeting before you make any decisions on this variance change as far as the height goes. And again, I don't think a lot of us have problems with the 40-foot height, ground level substation, pumping station. Like we said, we did know, we've been there for 20 some odd years. We knew that they had this property, not really zoned for a commercial project of this sort. However, 40-foot height versus 140 is quite a big difference. We are not in favor of that height, nor the eyesore, whatever color it may be. I know it's probably going to cost them more money to find either a lower substation. Maybe they have to do 2 substations to get whatever benefits they need to help with the future water pumping. That's not really my problem. That's their problem. That's their responsibility as the water company to come up with that money and the funding and the programs to do that. I know this is a residential area, and so a 140-foot tower is not what I deem a residential item by any means. The other thing too is if they have other properties that they already have besides just this one, and we haven't really, I don't know, maybe they do and they just want this one over that because it's closer or whatever, but maybe they could look at something like that. The other thing too is when they purchased that property, they never had the intention of building a 140-foot tower, or they would have already had this variance. They obviously knew there was a 40-foot height limit on this property when they bought it. So they can't really say that, hey, we wanted to build a 140-foot one because that was never allowed in the first place. The other thing is, as far as where it does drain into is, like they said, if there were to have a catastrophe or they do need to drain it or there should be some accident, things happen nowadays, are we required to get flood insurance now? As a homeowner, we have 2 ponds that those sewer systems drain into. We have spent quite a bit of money, about $60,000 or $70,000, our neighborhood has, just in the last couple of years, draining those ponds from filling in from all the silt and the debris and just algae and growth. So I don't want anything dumping back into those ponds, silt, whether it's got chemicals in it, clean water, whatever it is, it's not set up for that type of thing, and let alone, an emergency system either. So I just kind of want to put some points out there, and if I could ask the board to at least, at the bare minimum, if they do not say no to this variance, to at least extend it for another month so we can have some more people here to voice their complaints and concerns about it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God, I do. My name's Don Wendell. I live in 8 Moore Court, which is next to Pam and Mark's place. So I also share a backyard with the property we're talking about. I just want to echo the whole thing of, everybody's pretty much said everything I wanted to say by now. The only thing I was thinking about was that when they were talking about the sign, and then we were wondering if we were going to put it on one way or the other. I was trying to save them some money and say, why don't you just put it down at street level? You could even use a granite sign. Say American Water. Why do you have to be so high? That was one question I had. Obviously, it will be an eyesore. Is this 140 feet a magic number? Could we go 10 feet down more? 20 feet? Does it have to be 140 feet? Is there engineering thing Did they look at the different levels when they looked at the level, or did they just say, okay, we're just gonna do it this way because this is what we want, maybe for future reference? Or could we go 10 feet lower? Well, why not go higher? Then we don't have to deal with it later. But, I don't know, that was just some of the things I thought about. But like I said, I've agreed with everything that's been said here, so I don't want to waste your time with any more of that. But I thought the sign thing could be easily alleviated by just putting it at street level.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please identify yourself.
My name's Charles Shields. I live at 3 Greenbrier Summit Court. I'm kind of right in the middle between Pam and the neighbors with the pool. And one thing that, we do when we go out and barbecue in our backyard, that 140-foot water tower is really not going to be attractive. And so obviously, I'm not for that, as anyone else that had joined us tonight. And I know American Water, they talk about the cost benefits to their customers and the cost of another pump station and the infrastructure to supply that. But what they're not telling us is what the detrimental cost to our property value is. And I'm no real estate agent, but I do have properties, rental properties. My wife dives into real estate all the time. Her mother's a real estate agent. It's going to devalue our property, hands down. But they're not telling you that piece of it. But everybody here knows that to be fact. And how much that's going to be, I don't know. But my other question would be, at that point, are our taxes going to be reassessed so we can lower them? Because, I pay $4,500 a year in taxes. I pay $2,000 a year in homeowners insurance. Berkshire Downs is we're passionate about the subdivision. The individuals there keep their yards up. We put the Christmas lights out. We put decorations out for Halloween. We really are a community. We celebrate all the holidays. The 4th of July, you hear the fireworks going off. Nobody in the subdivision wants that, because we are a community, wants that water tower, 140 foot tall, in our backyard. 40 foot, you know what, we can live with that, right? That's already there, the 40 foot limit. The trees are going to cover it. I don't care how many trees you don't chop down around that property. You can look up and see a 140-foot water tower. And not to mention the deer and all that to actually come through my backyard, Mark's backyard, everyone that abuts up to that property line. And I truly am passionate about getting an extension before a decision is made so we can actually get with other owners in the subdivision. Or get them to sign a petition, because we do have some elderly there that are not for this. And I believe the timing was not good for anybody, right? They came out on the 23rd, we got the Christmas holidays, you got people out of town visiting their parents or their children for the holidays, and then we have New Year's around the corner, and then we have the meeting today. And no one really had time to juggle meeting with the other homeowners to address the issue. So I would really like to see a meeting set up in the future so we can address it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw somebody else come up and get a card. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth, swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So
I
help you
do.
God. Thank you. Your name, please?
Pam Siddle. I live at 5 Greenbrier Summit Court, which the proposed water tower is directly out of my atrium windows. So when we paid the premium for that lot to just have woods, not a 140-foot tall tower, never dreamed that that would be my view sitting on my couch. Didn't want it. Understand now that there is a chance that it might happen. If we are asking for an extension to think about this, get more people to know about this, is that something we would know tonight? If a decision is made yes or no, or an extension?
I think you would know that tonight.
We will know that tonight, okay. There is one issue, I'm having problems with the timeline. If they're saying that they didn't have this project on the books until, was it November that they said that they were starting this back on? Is that correct?
I think that's correct.
Okay, we had the survey company come out into our backyard and the adjoining property late summer, putting flags out. And that sewer line that they were talking is in our backyard. And so that's why I'm having problems with the timeline if you're saying November, because some of this stuff was going on late summer. And just want to agree with everybody else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
It's an
you.
eyesore, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Let's see, I want to make sure I don't get out of line here. I have a question from the young lady from the water company.
Yes, sir.
Can that, yeah, you got to come back up. Could the pressures and volume that you're anticipating be accomplished by doing a larger diameter tank, but not as high as that 140 feet?
No, sir, for every foot of height, and I don't want to get technical, there's 2.31 pounds of pressure that's added. So in order for us at certain times of the day to meet those demands, that height is needed so that people at the base of that tank at different elevations have at least 35 pounds of pressure at their homes, which is enough to keep us above the minimums that the state requires us to have from a public safety standpoint. That is why the tank height is. We have to keep minimum pressures for safety reasons, so that people have safe pressure, adequate pressure to their homes. So you don't have any siphoning or anything like that.
So there's no height between 40 and 140 that will work?
No, it's the driving force. For every foot, 2.31 pounds of pressure is added. So that's how it's not about width, it's about strictly height. The height is the driving force.
Okay, thank you. John?
Two
Yes, sir.
things while I have you up here. One is there, if you only had a tank that was 40 foot high, you couldn't increase, you said something earlier about you'd have to increase the pump station or something so that you could do it without the height. Did you say something like that?
If the original design back in 2005 was based on a 40-foot ground storage tank, that pump station that was there at the time, that's there right now, could support giving the pressures that needed with that 40-foot height tank. The communities have built up. You cannot get to those pressures that are needed now with that existing pump station, nor with that 40-foot height, because of the way the zones have expanded, the canal zone and the main zone, so.
Okay, but could you increase the pumps and make it happen with a large tank at 40 feet high?
Sir, the best way to say that is the infrastructure that would have to be put in would be massive. We would have to be able to have redundant electrical sources plus backup generators in order to keep people in adequate pressure. Should the electricity goes away, so does the water pressure. Having an elevated storage tank allows you to deliver that water pressure without a dependency upon electricity.
Okay, my other question, at what type of earthquake was this reinforced concrete base, I'm probably not saying that right, but whatever it's made out of, and the tank, what type of earthquake is it engineered for? A 6, an 8, what's it engineered for?
So Caldwell Tank, which is an expert tank supplier across the country, they zone it based on what the Missouri requirements for seismic zoning from the Department of Natural Resources, from the USGS seismic zone. So if it's a seismic zone 6, that pedestal's got to meet those requirements for a seismic zone 6. If it's a seismic zone 2, then that pedestal has to meet the requirements for a seismic zone 2. Whatever that earthquake capacity is in that zone, that concrete has to be able to withstand that for that duration that's required by the law for seismic zones.
Thank you.
And if I may, yes, the project started in November. Before you start a project, before you hire a contractor, before you design things, you do surveys. And the survey work is there to let you know the viability of the lot. So, yes, ma'am, there were surveyors out earlier, but the project did not start until November.
Stay up here, I got a question for you. too.
Sure.
Is there a reason why you didn't meet with the homeowners to at least say, hey, this is what we're planning on doing? You might have heard 40 foot years ago, but now we were gonna go 140 just to get their input. I mean, I think you know what their input would have been, but at least made them feel part of the process.
So Missouri American Water, and I can't tell you how it's been done in the past, but as we start a project, as it's gearing up, our external affairs group does take information from us. We do pass that on so that they can relay that as they need to the public. Currently, I'm building a clear well in Jefferson City, Missouri. And so as we started the project, that information went out through the news media, through press releases, to different things, but that's controlled by our external affairs. As a project engineer, I relay that information, and the timing of that information being released is what is best for the organization. I'm not making any excuses. I'm not saying that it's being hidden, but it's all part of our process in terms of how projects are started and how they're put out there. But some information has been given to our external affairs group in terms of what the project anticipates doing when we plan to have it in service.
And I asked you just earlier about if you looked at any other locations, and all you said was that you had bought this one in whatever,
1989. Yes, this was originally purchased in 1980.
So you haven't looked at anywhere else around there or in the area to say, hey, this is there's no subdivisions, this is a bunch of farm fields, or, you know, we can buy this property, or just try to look somewhere else?
I did not look for other locations because the planning group, engineering planning group, does the hydraulic system modeling to determine what is best for the system. When they hand it over to project delivery to start a project, we do our work based on what the planning group has said, this is the best location. If we were to build in another location, as I shared, infrastructure would have to be built in order to support those other locations. We do have tanks at what's called our harvester or our towers tanks, and some of those locations were looked at. Can you redo that, to answer your question? But this location, because of where it is, because of the base elevation, is the best location.
So how many other properties around do you guys own that are either got pump stations on it or potential water towers in the future?
I do
You don't
not
know?
know, sir, because usually you have to understand, us purchasing a piece of property does us no benefit in just owning the property. It's purchased with the intent of putting infrastructure there that can deliver water to the customers.
Yeah, I get.
Because our capital investment dollars are spent such that that's how we make money, is off of our capital investment dollars, not off of what we charge the ratepayers. But whenever we do a capital investment, that in turn turns around and impacts the ratepayers. I have to do a calculation that said, if I build this tank for X number of dollars, what is the impact to the ratepayers? And buying a new piece of parcel, building all that infrastructure to be able to support being able to put a tank in service, all of that comes back to the ratepayer. It will increase their rates.
Mr. Meyer, is there any type of ordinance that's required to, I mean, some of these homeowners admitted they knew there could be a potential for a 40-foot tower, so they knew that. I lived in a subdivision that backed up to where the Page Avenue extension ran through, and I knew about it 15 years before I bought my house, so I knew about it. So I made that decision when I bought my house. Hey, I know it's in the plan somewhere down the future that they're gonna put some type of, many lane highway through here. All these people would have known is American Water owns it, and they could put a 40-foot pump station on there.
I think that's right. People could see that the next door neighbor was a Missouri American Water, and there's not necessarily a long-range public plan or a long-range public notice that someday there could be a water tower at this location.
Is there any properties within the St. Charles County that are zoned that you could put a 140-foot water tower on?
Let's see, I think maybe industrial zoning districts, there's no height limit, but it's very limited. I would say that residences are part of the demand for the water.
Right.
So there are some non-residential uses that are allowed in some circumstances in residential zoning districts. For instance, a school, hospital, institutions, some utilities, for instance, sewage pump station. But how it's done is really the question here.
That answer your question? Given no additional public comments, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you. May I have a motion of approval for variance VAR 19-606?
Oh, we have to make a motion to keep going, so. I'll make a motion to approve with the county recommendation of, it applies only to this water tank only, and the height is limited to 140 feet.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. We can now call for a discussion. What other comments do we have?
I think we need to consider tabling it, or give an extension to the next meeting, at least, for if they want to get a petition or something to bring to us.
Would a petition have any effect on this, Robert?
Really what you're here to hear, whether or not there's grounds for a variance for the height. So in terms of if the testimony here tonight either supported or refuted the grounds for a variance, or if you thought that more time, with more time, that more information could come forward in terms of the grounds for variance, that might be a consideration. The burden of proof is really on the applicant to show whether or not they've met the criteria and whether there's grounds for a variance. So if you feel like that you have enough information to make a decision, my recommendation would be to go ahead and make a decision either for approval with conditions, or denial, one of the three. If you feel like that you don't have enough information, then that might be a reason to consider tabling it.
Okay. During her last testimony up here, I kind of gathered that a 40-foot tower could in fact work if some additional infrastructure were put in, that infrastructure would be costly. Quite frankly, I don't care about that because I don't use their water. And, you know, the cost can be something.
I'll send you my bill.
And certainly that is in their consideration, but I don't know if it's in our consideration whether to grant this variance or not.
Well, I would, in my thinking, a gravity-fed water tower is the preferred and the default for a couple of reasons. One is that it doesn't rely upon electricity, because if electricity goes down, the pumps go down, and you lose your water pressure. So there's ways around that. You can have backup supply or electricity generators, but you'll notice that, at least in what I see a lot more of the gravity-fed rather than the ground storage tanks. They've also indicated that years ago, the ground storage tanks might have worked, but at this point now, because of the growth, they're really seeing that it's the gravity-fed, the higher one, is what's necessary to make this work within the system that they have.
Thank you. David, did you have a comment?
No. You can read my mind, can't you?
That'd be scary. Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. John?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Vicki?
Yes.
No.
And I think I only vote if there's a tie. And there's not a tie. Huh?
Everyone votes.
Okay, no. So. Okay, so that variance has been denied. And we only did that because we didn't want you to bring your whole neighborhood in here.
I would, if I could point something out, please. According to our ordinance, 4 votes are required for any decision. So now you have 3 in favor and 2 no.
No, we got 3 no's and 2 yays.
3 no's and 2 yays, okay. So obviously it didn't pass, but our ordinance technically requires 4 votes for any decision.
No, to pass. 4 votes in the affirmative to pass it.
Yeah, so it didn't get 4, so it doesn't pass.
Right, but is that a decision?
Yeah.
That is a decision, yes.
Yes.
Are you okay with that?
What's your?
Well, what I was wondering is, it's obviously you're by your vote, you're not going to pass it, but do you want to then make a motion to defeat the variance and then vote on that?
We just did, 3-2. It was voted down.
Okay.
I mean, otherwise, if we always have to get either 4 yeses or 4 no's, we never get anything.
It requires 4 affirmative votes to pass. We did not get 4 affirmative votes.
Yeah.
So it didn't pass.
Okay. Well, if Ardita, are you okay with that? Okay.
All right?
That's fine, yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Go to the county council, they'll pass it for you.
All right, you get to read another one. Go for it.
Variance request for 1414 Highway Z, application VAR 19-04. Owner Wentzville Memorial VFW Post 5327. Applicant Mike Junta. Request to vary section 405.475.A.1 of the ordinances of St. Charles County to allow for the display of an electronic sign in the A agricultural district, which is not permitted. And 2, a request to vary section 405.490.b of the ordinances of St. Charles County to allow the sign to operate so that it is flashing, which is not permitted. Property zoning, A agricultural district, area 8.57 acres, location approximately 320 feet south of the intersection of Highway Z and Peruke Hills Parkway, adjacent to the city of Wentzville, Council District 2.
Is the property owner, our applicant, or a representative here to speak on this application? Okay, you know the drill. Please.
As long as I don't have to
Do you
sign.
solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And please identify, Robert?
This was tabled at a previous meeting, so I believe you need to take it off the table, to vote to take it off the table, technically.
We have to vote to take it off the table?
Technically, yes.
Motion to take
Yes.
this off the table and back to discussion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Does that do it?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
You got 4.
We got 5 that time.
Yeah, that way.
All right, sir, proceed.
see.
You're
I'll identify myself. I'm Jeff Bornfeld. I live at 31 Countryside, St. Peters. I'm the commander at the VFW in Wentzville. Went to Acton, did some work. We even actually met with staff to look at maybe a zoning, going back to the membership. It wasn't feasible at this time as far as cost-wise for us to do a zoning. We wanted to stay with this here, plus the letters, which should be, you have the letters from a few of our state representatives. I'm not sure if you have the letter from MoDOT, but I do have it here. And I also wanted, and it's up on the board there.
Sorry, the print's too
Can we get a
small for
copy
me to
of
read.
this? A copy or,
We need to see that if it's not.
Yeah, I need to read that, please.
Taking up some.
Here, I'll give you my copy. And let's see if notice one thing on the app that it said about flashing. I'm okay with that part, not flashing, as discussed with staff
Okay.
before.
So, just for clarification, are you proposing to withdraw that second variance request to?
As far as the flashing, as long as I can just move the next, move into the
Yes.
next sign like we discussed before.
Okay.
With the, not a,
10-second hold time between images?
Yes.
That's our ordinance. Okay, thank you.
So we can get rid of number 2?
Yeah.
also, there's some photos. And I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of time on the letter from MoDOT. But we do know we're going to need to relocate that sign. Up here on the wall where you can almost see the pole, that's where that property line is. We have that existing structure with our helicopter, if everybody's familiar with where we're at there. And we've had a few Eagle Scouts come out and rebuild that deck just last year. Our proposal is to move that signage to where that deck is. I took these pictures the other night. That there is facing out towards Highway Z. You can see the blade from the helicopter. I would turn that to face the road, which the next slide, okay, that's facing, I lost my north-south, but That would be south, yeah, that would be facing south. And that's where you see the sign at, that would come away. We would put that back to where that, on that fencing there. And that would be our proposed to move that into the property line. And then at that time, when we would go to a sign permit, working with staff as far as making it look nice, beautifying it, that's something that we're willing to do. Going the other way, I would edge it out facing that way. And I'm standing at that sign, I'm standing right at that edge of this decking, so that I would turn that just a little bit this way. I believe that's the subdivision with the house lit up. And I tried to do these at night so we could see where the house was lit up and not in the day, just to see how. I think that is the one subdivision where one of the houses is, that was concerned about the brightness. I did put an upgrade into the sign. I had it downloaded where I can adjust, I call it the volume, but the brightness. And I set that Saturday night. So now it's 7 o'clock at night. It's from a 10 to a 1 scale. I moved that down to a 3 just to get an idea of where I'm at. And then at 11 o'clock, I could either turn it off, but I set it down to 1 where it does not glow any light at all. Just enough to where you could read the sign if you were to come up or if you were to look that way. I know that we're aware of the sign being relocated. Talking with them, they're not in a big hurry. Would like to move the sign back into the spring, to relocate it in the spring. MoDOT said we don't need to do this right now. We're not planning on doing anything to 2024, which from what I was told that they're looking at doing a 4-lane road there, so with a turning lane. So, and where that's at right there is what I'm talking about on the edge here, would kind of turn it this way. But that's where I want to locate it. As far as how we do it, that's where I would like to, I'd get with staff and as far as, locating it out in the spring with the sign permit to make it work, make it look nice, make it kind of I definitely don't want it to be an eyesore. There's another photo in there of an old existing sign. Let's see. At least I thought there was. If not, I have it. I don't see it. I might not have sent it to you, but I have a copy of it. This is one of the old signs that would be taken down, just to help beautify that area and make that green space. Get that tore down, and then eventually that proposed where where the dumpster was, we'd move that back down and eventually put a 3-sided fence on that. The biggest thing, as far as being friendly to our neighbors, is getting that tone down too on the sign. I think that is going to help. So it doesn't throw it out there in the middle of the night. I wouldn't want, at 11 o'clock at night, I wouldn't want a sign glaring down there. It is pretty far off. None of the other neighbors had any issues that I've talked to. They said it's not fine. They said it'd be even nicer if I could get it toned down, which I got that figured out and got that down. We're simply just basically replacing that old sign that was in there to the LED. It saves off, but we are going to move it over there. That's so we can get our word out, our messages out. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help.
I mean, you figured it out and you're ahead of it now, but how in your organization would you handle that sign not being turned up to full brightness in the future because somebody thought it ought to be?
I have already trained 3 other people on how to do that, and I also got it set on a timer, so I don't have to go there. When I had this upgraded software, it makes it easier. They just downloaded it, and then I put it out to the motherboard.
Is
So-
that something you put in your bylaws for your club and organization?
I could have that put in the next meeting next Monday, but there's directions in our safe on how to use that sign.
In all fairness, I belong to
Right,
this organization. There's always other members and somebody 5 years from now with a different opinion. You know what I mean?
And that's kind of where I'm at today, because for the longest time, we never knew we didn't have an issue for the old sign. We just figured, okay, we're gonna replace that never knew that. Heck, we didn't even know, maybe some of the members knew it was in the right of way, but we never, and MoDOT never had an issue with it. When we contacted them, they're like, hey, not in a big hurry, but it definitely needs to be moved. So, and we're okay with that. But yeah, it's been passed down. My adjutant actually knows how to use the sign too. And then my bar manager knows how to turn the sign. But it is set, dialed in to where I have the timer set, and then at those times it automatically will lower the brightness. And I naturally daylight savings time, that would be something that we need to go in to lowering it down too. And I'm not against turning it off at 11 o'clock at night and not bringing it back up until 6. I'm okay with that too. I'm not trying to be, difficult as far as the neighborhood and all that. I mean, the whole thing for the sign is to bring people in to experience our post. So
Have you talked to your neighbor, Jason Durham, since you've?
I have not talked to him. I do know where he lives and it's a picture, but I have not been able to get a hold of him. The people that I did knock on the doors around there and on the other side where the townhouses, there was no issue. So.
As Mr. Matlock said, I guess we're just concerned that in a year or two, this isn't lost. And, I'd kind of like to have it on the public record that you guys intend to keep it as you just described and not have it turned up.
I have no problem putting that on the public record at all. Not a problem at all.
And it would be great if somehow you could put that into the minutes of your organization.
I will do that.
And,
Or if we grant it, we could put it into our motion, make it a condition of the motion.
Absolutely.
Good call.
Matter of fact, even tell me the time and whatever. I can change it 3 times during the day as far as the programming on this board. Matter of fact, the updated board, I asked to see if I could do it from laptop, but I can't. But I have 2 remotes, because that would be really nice, because then we could just sit at home and say, hey, we need to change this. But because I live in St. Peters, have to drive to. So that's why I want more people to know how to use that board, but I also don't want certain people using that board to put messages out there we don't need. So any of the officers that get elected will go through the training to know how to use that board, and then that way it's kept under those officers. So the next commander that would relieve me, that would be part of the training and turnover. And we'll put that in our minutes Monday. I'll bring that up Monday, and that way it's written down in our minutes, not a problem at all. And I can send a copy that way too, and then you guys put it in your thing, so.
great.
Vicki, do you have any questions or comments?
Why did you stop the zoning to rezone it?
Cost, survey company came back to us with the cost to do it. The first survey they did, no charge. I put it in front of the board. Again, I don't do everything on my own, but I put it in front of them, and they were concerned with the cost. And they said, can we go through with this, with the other, when I came up before, I didn't have those letters in yet from all the representatives and senators. So they chose to drop that zoning right now until we get costs, because there's some other buildings going, some building in the future. Again, I got to get that membership up to get there to build that. But the cost, that they voted it down, so.
So you're planning to add more buildings in the future?
There could be buildings are a different setup, are adding on to that building, the existing building. on the back. So that would be a time that they would look at that.
What was the price of the survey that your membership
It was
turned
close to
down?
$6,000, yes. And once they heard that number, I let it up to them, so,
Take a lot of meat shoots to pay for that.
yes.
Didn't, for discussion, I guess, didn't we have a problem before because it's not allowed, period, in agricultural? That's why we asked them to rezone it? It's still agricultural, right?
Yes, it is.
You realize, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know of a way we can approve it as agricultural. Staff help us here?
We're prepared to make a staff report whenever you'd like. And we can cover that at that time. But
What precedent does this set into every other agricultural area person who wants to put up a sign? Does this legally bind the county that, hey, if you did it over here, and are we gonna get 1,000 of these?
Well,
We could.
we feel like that it undermines the integrity of the zoning ordinance for several reasons. One is that they would be, should this be granted, then they would be allowed to do something that other properties in the same zoning district couldn't. If I could explain it, much of the time, variances are offered to provide relief for people who want to do something that others with the same set of circumstances can do, but they can't. But this is kind of the opposite. They want to be able to do something that others could not, other institutions could not in that same zoning district. So also it would be hard to argue, honestly, why other institutions in the agricultural zoning district also couldn't have digital signs. For whatever reason, the county council decided that in this zoning district, digital signs would not be allowed, that they would be allowed in commercial and industrial. And so this is zoned agricultural, and for those reasons, we feel like that doesn't meet that criteria. And I would say that it needs to meet all 4 criteria in order for variance to be granted, but
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we state to them the last time they were here that we thought the practical way to go about this was to get that rezoning so that we could give them a permit to put this in a proper zoning rather than set a dangerous precedent about giving them a variance that would affect other people?
we have outlined the ways forward, and the first way forward will be to rezone the property to commercial zoning district, and it could be any commercial zoning district, including C1 neighborhood commercial district. There would be some benefits, I think, to that because they have a memorial park, and in the C1 zoning district, parks are allowed by right in that zoning district, and also this use would be allowed by right in that zoning district as well. So that would be a good fit. Now, the other way forward would be to apply for a variance, but frankly, it's more difficult because you have to show that there's a limitation with your property that holds back your property that's, I'm sorry, there's a hardship having to do with the land that is really the rationale for why a variance should be granted, and it has to meet all 4 of the rationale. It's difficult to show, frankly, that there's a hardship with the land that dictates why someone should have a digital sign rather than a standard sign, especially since they had a standard sign for years, and that seemed to work for that. So they have alternate, what I might call alternative means of expression. It's not like that without a digital sign, they can't express themselves at all.
Well, we had a lighted sign, right? We had a lighted sign, but you had to change the.
I'm sorry, wasn't that an unpermit, you didn't ever get a permit for
We
that
never,
lighted sign?
but it was
Yeah.
there for, I think it was at least 11 years.
Whatever,
And
yeah.
That was the reason why I came in and said, look, this thing's falling apart. Let's
Right.
put an LED board in there, reuse the metal structure.
Technically, it should have not been allowed according to ordinance anyway.
Court of ordinance, but yeah, it was there for a long period of time.
Did you try and get multiple bids for the survey? I'm not a surveyor, Kevin, you do that more than I do. Is $6,000
That's probably in the ballpark.
Reasonable price.
Yeah, but, the last one that we had, and then when I brought that in front of the board, or in front of my membership to vote on, to go continue with the survey, this is where they said go back to the variance. And that's why I'm here now. It's that, and with the letters, they figured,
Why don't you get a member who's a surveyor?
I have an X one.
X one, oh, he's getting the finger pointed at him.
Yeah, the cost of that's where they're concerned with, so.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
You said that in the future, you're going to do some building.
We're looking at how far out, I don't know.
Well, if that was 5 years, you would have to get it rezoned for any kind of building. That would be the time that this would all take place. I mean, if the variance is not granted tonight, it's still going to have to be done at some point.
Eventually, it'll come down to that. I don't know which way they're gonna go, but I mean, we don't know if it's gonna be a whole separate building. It's more or less out the back side is what they talked about. So I don't know if that's gonna happen or what, or where we're at, but that's the future down the road, so. The biggest issue, that, right now, is just trying to get the membership up, so.
They wouldn't be able to do any kind of a building extension, though, would they? Without getting
Oh, no, we would have to.
it zoned correctly and all of that.
Well, under the existing zoning, they could apply for a conditional use permit to expand right now, technically, it's a private club. I think it was 1989, was it?
84.
84.
Yeah.
So in 1984, the VFW Hall applied for a conditional use permit for a private club, and that's what they're operating currently. So they could expand with a conditional use permit. Now, if they have other plans that go beyond the agricultural zoning district, they would need to look at rezoning to some other district.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak for or against this request for variance? Any other comments from the staff? Robert, have you said your piece?
Well, I guess it just depends on if you have any questions or not. I would just say that in this case, I think it's difficult to show that all four criteria are met in terms of a hardship having to do with the land that dictates a digital sign rather than a traditional sign. So we're not finding that actually that this application meets any of the four criteria. That would be our recommendation. Now, should you decide to grant a variance, we do have several draft conditions that for your consideration, and one would be that the variance should be valid only for the subject freestanding sign, and second, that a copy of the Missouri Department of Transportation sign permit should be submitted with the application for the county sign permit. Obviously, they would need to get a sign permit from the county in order to do anything. So there's still a little ways from, even if should this be granted, there's still some steps they needed to take. They need to take out a sign permit, electrical permit, and some other things like that.
But what's the county gonna ask for to give them a permit?
What would we ask them for?
Yeah, I mean,
We would ask for a plot plan showing where on the property it's going to go, information, the size for the sign, the height, its electrical connection, basic information like that. Also, digital signs that has a maximum brightness during the daytime of 5,000 nits, and from dusk till dawn, it can have a maximum brightness of 500 nits as measured at the face of the sign. So we do already have a provision in our code in terms of sign brightness. We have light meters, and if we get a complaint, we can come out and actually measure the brightness of a sign to ensure that it's being operated in a way that's consistent.
I can almost
with the ordinance.
guarantee you'll get one complaint. Okay, anybody in the audience wish to speak for or against this? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I hear a motion? Can't sit here all night, you know.
Motion to approve with the board recommendation that the variance shall be valid only for the subject freestanding sign, and a copy of the Missouri Department of Transportation sign permit shall be submitted with the application for the county sign permit, period. Should MoDOT determine that no state sign permit is required, a letter from that agency shall be required stating such.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion from the board?
I have some,
Okay.
you know, if we approve this, does that mean all the wineries down 94 can now, that are on agricultural ground, can come in here and tell us they want a sign that we've denied for years?
That's the concern about precedent, and they would have a point. You know, why could this particular operation have this but not us? That would be the
Previous
question.
with P&Z, I remember that coming up, you know, several times. I think it got denied every time. They said it had to be on commercial, that's why there's two. There's one place down there that had commercial ground or something, so they put some signs back to back or something on it. I forget the exact thing, but they ended up putting their signs on commercial ground.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's my biggest fear.
Yeah, I think there's an out with getting it rezoned. I wasn't at the first meeting when you guys tabled it, so I don't know what you all discussed. But I thought you gave them an out to go get it rezoned.
We allowed time for that, I think.
Sure. Well, I'm still in favor of that, by the way. I don't like what John's talking about, every winery down the highway coming back and saying.
Or other, that's just ones I've been
Sure.
involved in previous.
Sure. You've been involved in a lot of wineries, haven't you?
Well, been involved in that corridor.
Understand.
There's probably others around the county that are denied signs in ag that I don't know about or not familiar with.
Probably. Our signs, like the gentleman said, they don't know that they're not in compliance. They've been up 10 or 11 years or whenever. Okay, I'm going to call for the question. David?
No.
Vicki?
No.
Mr. Surveyor?
No.
No.
No. Is that enough, Bob?
Yes. Five.
And I still will tell you guys, the way to go that is to get it, you know, get whatever hump you gotta get over to get that thing zoned.
Do I need now to sign for the appeal or to go to council or?
We want to appeal to the county council.
Is this where I would ask for an appeal to the council or?
You can just, if you want to appeal, you can appeal it to the county council. You don't need to ask for this one.
Oh, okay, I didn't-
You can just, you have to appeal within, I think, 14 business days.
I'm sorry.
Here's your letter back too. Yeah, we need a copy of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's.
Motion to approve the minutes from November 7, 2019.
So move.
You want to second it?
Oh, second,
He
I'm
said
sorry.
so,
yeah.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good, okay, so I'll sign them. Now we need to do the officers, election of officers for 2020.
I make a motion that we let the offices stand as they are now.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Anything else, Sheila?
Yes,
Wait, I guess I can be I've been 4 years already.
I'm just about, I
Yeah.
can just about read through that without stuttering.
I know.
So is that a reappointment?
Well, it says.
You guys just send them a
They
letter.
left,
Was
but the, I
appointed
guess we're,
What do I have to
we need to
Send them
close
a
the
letter.
meeting.
Yes. One of, I'd entertain a motion to, close the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
That's what I meant.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I
Okay.
got a copy, I sent a letter.
The water tower can go to the county council.